annually. And this will see the cumulative investments in clean energy infrastructure since the formation of UNESA surpass $1 trillion by 2030. This is how we turn policy into progress. It means UNESA members are on track to achieve a trebling of our renewables capacity by 2030, in line with the tripling commitment established at COP28. We should be proud of this commitment, but also we need to be absolutely clear this is nowhere near enough. $1 trillion by 2030 is fantastic, but to put that in context, it is less than a tenth of the total investment that will be needed to hit the world's energy transition goals. So accepting that we can't do it all alone, it's important that UNESA works to unlock wider investment. This is why we've been delighted to support the Green Grids Initiative, the high-level champions and the COP presidency in their efforts to drive endorsement from green finance providers for the grid financing principles launched in New York in September. We know that developing economies continue to face barriers to delivering cleaner power, particularly when it comes to assessing financing for grids. This means progress is being concentrated in Asia, Europe and North America, and that has to change. So let me emphasise on behalf of UNESA our support for the work of the Presidency and the GCI on this vital agenda, and urge the green finance community to endorse the principles and get capital flowing to where it's needed. The principles are a good example of how we can truly accelerate solutions, to borrow the Presidency's language. And finally, and to that end, UNESA will shortly be publishing our Global Progress Update on the Energy and Storage Grids Pledge established at COP29. As well as charting progress to date, it will set out some clear recommendations for how to unlock faster progress, including the role of regulators in enabling anticipatory investment and providing longer-term certainty to developers in the supply chain, the need for much longer-term holistic grid planning based on the needs of the 2050 energy system, the need to streamline planning and permitting processes, a far greater focus on flexibility across grids, generation and storage, and the need to drive much greater optimisation of existing capacity. These are important areas to focus on as we seek to drive the step change we need to keep progress on track. In summary, we as a community have plenty to be proud of, but so much more to do. And I'm hopeful that through the leadership of the COP30 presidency and with the support of those in this room, COP30 can truly be a catalyst for accelerating solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips Davis, for those remarks. And I would ask Bruna Cerqueira if she would have some comments. Once again, Bruna Cerqueira is the COP30 Presidency Director for the Action Agenda.
Thank you very much, and it is great to be with you today. So I just want to add a bit of the background to what Anna described and what we have heard from UNESA. Today we are highlighting the key aspects of the energy part of the action agenda. And this is very exciting because the energy stakeholders have really embodied the spirit that we're trying to get to this COP with the action agenda, where we're not building from zero, but we are building on the initiatives that have already been in place. Energy, the access of energy, industry and transport is the access of the action agenda where we have found most of the initiatives that have come from the past. And they have come together, and I think that now what a lot of them are doing in different spaces is really bringing together the different perspectives and capacities of these different initiatives and looking at what are the roadblocks that they can remove to accelerate action. So this is true for industry, as we have seen with the Belém Declaration on Global Green Industrialization. This is bringing together initiatives like the ITA that was launched at COP28, the Breakthrough Agenda that was launched at COP26, and a number of countries that have decided now to work together, each with the capacities of what comes from the private sector, the capacities of what comes from the regulators, to then accelerate industry decarbonization in the different products and the different sectors that they work in. This is also true for grids and storage. So I think the big highlights, as I said, industry, and there's quite a bit more coming from the different initiatives there in terms of results that they are announcing. on grids and storage, and we have seen UNESA as the big highlight. But there's a big group through the Green Grids Initiative that is coming together with a plan to accelerate solutions. So bringing the power of the private sector, but also understanding how we can bring together the regulators to make this go faster. And then in addition to that, I think we're looking at sustainable fuels. That is something that hasn't been in the agenda for COPs before, but that we have managed through this declaration of bringing fourfold increase in sustainable fuels to bring this to the agenda. And there are a number of initiatives that are becoming a part of that, and countries that are supporting from many different country and regional contexts. And then energy efficiency is also a big theme that we're highlighting today. And we've seen through the Sustainable Energy for All initiative, they have brought together also a number of stakeholders that are working in this space to create a plan to accelerate solutions. And finally, on the point of transition away from fossil fuels, we have also seen a number of initiatives that have been created in the past, like BOGA, like COFIs, also announcing, not only today, but we will see a piece of this in the next week as well, the results that they have been able to achieve. So I think this is really what we wanted to do here, to incentivize the initiatives, to put force behind the initiatives that had already been created, to be able to deliver on results and accelerate action.
Thank you. Today's press conference will have to be a little bit shorter than usual due to prior commitments from our guests, but we'll try to take a few questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand. You can go over to your colleague there in the second row.
Hi, I'm Matheus from Worldcast, Agência Estado. My question is for Ana, and I'd like to know, how did you receive yesterday's letter from UN, a letter that criticized some points of the organization from Brazil's presidency, and what actions have you choose to path to fulfill the asks from UN?
And we can take another question here. We can go over to the gentleman in the front here, Seth.
Yes, thank you. Seth Borenstein, Associated Press.
Can you speak? Yeah,
Seth Borenstein, speak up a little Associated bit. Press. For Ana Tony, this was supposed to be the COP that empowered and celebrated indigenous people, yet you've had two major disruptions in 4 days, and with indigenous people feeling not empowered. Can you explain what you think the COP presidency has not done here, and what are you planning to change because of this?
Thank you. Thank you for those two questions that had nothing to do with what we talked about energy industry going forward, but obviously we're happy to answer them. In relation to the UN, we are debating and discussing with the UN throughout for the whole moment. There is a very fluid communication of letters going back and forth between the UN on issues, challenges, and we are debating. We receive the letter, we respond to the letter, we act on some of those questions, and obviously we continued working together. So we received well, and continued working has been a fluid communication. On the indigenous people, we really look at what happened yesterday or the day before and today, really a celebration on having a COP in the Amazon. We have a COP in the Amazon. Brazil, President Lula could have chosen having a COP in São Paulo or in Rio or in Brasilia. We would not see indigenous people. We would not be in debate. They wouldn't have their voice heard. They have different ways of protesting. We have, as COP30 presidency, create a circle of the people, led by our Minister Sônia Guajajara. We have been debating throughout with the indigenous caucus. I think they feel included, very much so. Minister Sônia was there now negotiating with them. The COP30 presidency attended them as much as they have. There are all different ways of protesting. inside, outside. There are protocols for that. We are listening to their voice. And Brazil, fortunately, have a very strong democracy in which people are allowed to protest in the different ways that they wanted. So we are dialoguing with them. They are there at this stage. And we're probably going to be hearing from indigenous people throughout this COP. The reason for having a COP in the Amazon is for us to listen to the very people that are most vulnerable. So we should embrace their different ways of protesting. We are dialoguing with them. We knew it would be very great numbers. We heard yesterday also, we had a meeting with the Indigenous Caucus, and we heard this has been the most inclusive COP for indigenous people. We had, I think it's 900 indigenous people being accredited inside this COP. The last COP that had a large number of indigenous people, if the number I got from the UNFCCC was about 300, so we have 900. We know those are processes going forward, very important one, and we will continue dialoguing with the legitimate calls that indigenous people have. We are listening to them. The manifestation they had was legitimate. They have asked clarification about processes that are about not just the COP, but about national policies. Minister Sônia Guajajara and Minister Marina there, and we will continue dialoguing with them as it should be. Thank you.
We can take 2 more questions. We can go to our gentleman in the back there.
Matteo Civillene, Climate Home News. My question is on the pledge to quadruple sustainable fuels. You said more countries have joined. Which countries are those? And are there any concrete steps already that have been agreed or that are being discussed, and what are those in case? Thank you.
And we can take another question. We go over to here, second row.
I'd like to, my name is Claudia Antunes. I work for Sumauma, a Brazilian website. I'd like to ask Mr. Alistair how important it is for the private sector in terms of energy transition to have a clear political decision from the governments in terms of how we are going to transition away. So, how important is the political direction that the governments can give in terms of directing private and other investments?
All right, I'm happy to start with the sustainable fuels question. So we now have 23 countries as part of that. The list is Andorra, Armenia, Belarus, Brazil, Cabo Verde, Cape Green, is that how Canada, Chile, Guatemala, Guinea, India, Italy, Japan, Kenya, Maldives, Mexico, Mozambique, Myanmar, the Netherlands, Panama, North Korea, Sudan, UAE, and Zambia. Those are the countries that have so far endorsed the 4 times increase in sustainable fuels. And there is, attached to the declaration, there is a plan to accelerate solution that is connected to that. So this is a format that, that the initiatives have used as part of the action agenda this year, which includes at the top a diagnostics about what is happening with sustainable fuels at the moment and what is stopping them from accelerating, and then actions that are specific to what they're going to do next. The plan is available online. It is on the NASCA portal, the Global Climate Action portal, but it basically includes actions related to demand creation for sustainable fuels, transparent carbon accounting, infrastructure development, and trade corridors.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Energy policy, I think, is absolutely critical to driving where the private sector goes in terms of investing. It's absolutely critical. Essentially, energy is a huge political issue if it's not dealt with appropriately. If you get blackouts in countries, if you don't have power being made available, then that rapidly becomes a matter for politicians because it's a matter for voters. And we've seen that time and time again. I think it's important that governments try and set targets, and I think it's also important that they set out particularly plans for where they want to see investment. If you leave things purely to the market, you will end up with issues that we've seen throughout the world. You can see them at the moment to some extent in the US, where they've got a bit of a jump in terms of what they need in power, but they've got a lot of people scrambling around trying to figure out how they're going to satisfy the power needs there. What we've seen, and particularly in the UK and parts of Europe, there has been strong political leadership. People have set out things like plans for networks so we can do anticipatory investment. We have to remember that the supply chains take a long time to build, and in addition, many of these assets can take an even longer time to build. Even from the start, building things like the biggest offshore wind farm in the world at Dogger Bank will take us 4 years. The planning process before that was probably close to a decade. So having clear political steer, having a clear political will, having plans brought forward creates the right environment to bring forward the investment and to do that in the most cost-effective way for the public. And the public, at the end of the day, do want to see cost-effective delivery and ultimately low tariffs.
Thank you. Like I said, we're very pressed for time today. Maybe we can squeeze in one last question here for the gentleman in the first row.
Hi, yes, Oliver Millman from The Guardian. Just on the interventions from indigenous people, so people have noticed more security around the venue, particularly last night and this morning. What can we expect in terms of the security presence in the light of the concerns raised by the UN about security, and how you balance that with people's right to protest and access these talks? Could you just talk through how that balance will be played out in the rest of the COP?
As you know, there is protocols between the United Nations and the hosting government on security. We will follow the protocol as is being done. We also know that there is protocols on doing protests, how they work both inside and outside. So if we all feel and use the protocols, I think we all going to be fine, as we have been so far. And we will continue seeing protests. I understand tomorrow there is a big protest being organized outside as well. This is part of democracy. We all need to respect how people express, and let us just follow the protocols that have been agreed between the United Nations as well as the Brazilian government. We are following them, and they will continue being followed going forward.
Thank you, Ana. If Mr. Alistair or Bruno want to share any final remarks? Otherwise, we would...
Okay, so briefly, closing remarks on this. I think essentially on behalf of UNISA, what I'd like to say is, again, thank the Presidency for everything that they've done here. Be very, very clear that what we want to see going forward is this focus on actually delivering what can be there, and therefore whatever governments, whatever the Presidency can agree with the many nations represented here will give us a clear view of what we need to do. And talking about that political view that we got the question earlier, having that political view from all the nations will empower us to go and make sure that we take that $1 trillion+ we've announced today and make it a much bigger number in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes our press conference. I'd like to thank you all for joining. Thank you.